They gave us scrap metal. We built the most feared Dreadnought in known space. The day the Galactic Confederation extended an offer of membership to humanity, Commander Ezra Blackstone recognized it as too good to be true. He was in the sterling white room on the diplomatic ship, gazing upon the holographic screen that glittered with unfeasible loveliness. Old civilizations of 1,000 years or more, far advanced beyond human understanding, their technologies sparkling like gems across the star chart. And there, just on the fringes, was Earth, a minuscule blue dot that had managed to grab their attention. Ambassador Kethver, a crystal-like being whose mind spoke on harmonics, spoke with what constituted diplomatic graciousness among their race. Your world possesses exceptional potential, even if it's still a primitive world. We present you with the offer of membership within our confederacy, inclusion within our commerce network, and defense under our mutual defense agreements. Ezra had spent 30 years in Earth's combined fleet, battled pirates in the asteroid belt, protected mining colonies against raiders. He could spot when a person was trying to sell him something worthless. What's the catch? The implant translator fought with Kethver's answer. The intricate patterns of harmonics that approximately translated as amusement and a touch of condescension, and something else much darker. Your species shares some distinct qualities. Your ability to survive under antagonist conditions is the stuff of legend, even among Death World species. We require just such specialists. Specialists for what? The Rim worlds have gotten troublesome pirates. Marauding AI constructs, beings that won't submit to Confederation authority. Someone has to bring some order. Your folks would be just the job for the task. Ezra's jaw set. Mercenaries? They wanted humanity as attack dogs for themselves, mopping up problems too dirty for civilized species to deal with. And what do we get out of it? Total membership rights, use of Confederation facilities, trading rights, technology swaps. Kethver's shape changed, harmonics assuming what the translator defined as gracious magnanimity. For good faith, we grant instant payment, salvage material of real value, recovered in our most recent battle. Raw materials which can be utilized for the upgrading of your antiquated ships. The hologram changed, revealing huge masses of twisted metal suspended in space. Pieces of hull, shattered drive cores, broken weapon enclosures. It was like the wreckage of a war between titans, fields of wreckage stretching for hundreds of kilometers. Most of it looked like junk, even to Ezra's seasoned eye. This is your idea of valuable salvage. These materials represent technology centuries beyond your current capabilities. Alloys that can withstand the heat of stellar cores, quantum-locked. Metals that exist in 17 dimensions simultaneously. Computational matrices that process information faster than most organic minds can comprehend. Your engineers will find them educational. Ezra looked more attentively at the wreckage field. In among the overt wreckage were pieces he could not identify. Geometric forms painful to gaze directly upon. Architecture that appeared to warp space. On itself, whatever war had created this cemetery had been waged with ordnance that made terrestrial technology seem like stone blades. We'll have some time to think it over. Yes, take whatever time you need. After all, we're a patient species. The harmonic undertones continued that patience had a limit, and it was a limit expressed in days rather than years. 3 weeks afterwards, Ezra stood on the deck of the heavy transport ship Titan's Forge, seeing the promised salvage being gathered up by automated equipment. The debris field was more impressive up close. Sizable chunks of metal the size of city blocks floated in neat formation, suspended as if bound by some sort of stasis field that had come before human civilization by thousands of years. Chief Engineer Maya Voss floated beside him in zero gravity, her augmented eyes scanning the wreckage with barely contained excitement. Commander, some of this stuff. I've never seen anything like it. Look at this piece here. She highlighted a section of hull plating on her tablet. The metal is absorbing and redirecting energy at the quantum level. It's not just armor, it's actively rewriting the laws of physics around itself. Can we use it? That's the question, isn't it? The Confederation even sent us junk metal and called it a gift. But they shouldn't have underestimated human stubbornness. Maya's smile was feral. We don't work with technology, Commander. We take it apart, reverse engineer it, and build a better version ourselves than the original designers could have dreamed up. The retrieval mission had lasted 6 months. Slowly, piece by piece, the Titan's Forge gathered up wreckage from a score of various non-human civilizations. And every piece denoted technology which couldn't be if physics was correctly worked out by the human species. Crystals which held information within the quantum foam. Plating which was in a condition of deliberate temporal flux. Weapons which shot ordnance through bent spacetime. Maya and her engineering team worked around the clock, analyzing each piece, cataloging its properties, figuring out how it functioned. Most of it was damaged beyond repair. Systems shattered by whatever cosmic conflict had created the debris field. But buried within the wreckage were secrets that made Maya's augmented heart race with possibility. Commander, you have to see it. Maya's voice was tense with excitement as she dragged Ezra through the augmented labs of the Titan's Forge. The ship had been redone on the spot as part of the salvage mission. The cargo holds having been fitted out as labs which would have brought university scientists to tears of rapture. They stood in front of a workstation where various units of alien technology had been put together with deliberate care. Incompatible on the surface. Pieces from various civilizations that had never meant their inventions to be combined, they had seemed. Yet Maya had discovered interfaces the original designers had never dreamed of. This here crystal matrix, it's a Zelnak hegemony manufacture. Quantum computer system which can perform 17 billion calculations inside a nanosecond. That piece of hull plating's a Thrakari military spec piece designed for the absorption and deflection of energy-based attacks. And those bits of weaponry are something nobody I have can identify. Technology which doesn't match a civilization within the Confederation's database. Ezra studied the components more carefully. What happens when you put them together? What I have been seeking to find out. On their own, they're good, but limited. The quantum matrix is beyond the ability of human computers to interact with. The hull plating requires the energy inputs that would drain our entire power grid. The weapon sections need computational support beyond our ability for data processing. But together, Maya's grin was answer enough. Together, they create feedback loops that amplify each component exponentially. The quantum matrix provides processing power to control the hull plating's energy absorption. The hull plating channels absorbed energy to power the weapon components. The weapon components generate quantum distortions that enhance the matrix's computational capabilities. Show me. Maya energized the combined units with a careful set of orders. The matrix crystals began glowing with interior light, harmonic notes resonating within the laboratory. The hull plating cycled color, its face trembling like liquid metal as it pulled energy away from the peripheral power draws on the illumination network within the rooms. The units for the weapon hummed with power restrained, space around them starting to ripple and causing Ezra's eyes to sting. This is just a small part of what's possible, Maya breathed, her eyes shining with awe. Commander, we're not seeing just alien technology here. We're seeing the beginnings for something completely new. Something nobody in the Confederation's ever seen before. The concept started taking form during the succeeding months. Not only a vessel, but a statement. A statement that humankind wouldn't be anyone's attack dogs. That the children of Earth could take the leftovers given by interstellar civilization and shape them into something the stars themselves would shudder at Maya threw herself into the design work with an obsession that worried her medical staff. She barely slept, surviving on stimulants and raw determination as she wrestled with technologies that challenged the fundamental laws of physics. Her neural implants worked overtime, processing calculations that pushed the boundaries of human cognitive enhancement. The initial major breakthrough was when she learned to connect human computer systems and alien quantum matrices. It necessitated new programming languages, 17th-dimensional computational models existing all at once. Most human programmers would have gone mad with the sheer complexity. But for her entire career, she had worked on the edge of what was feasible. The second breakthrough was more dramatic. It was possible, she discovered, to code the hull plating material on the molecular level, rewrite the quantum matrix for the purpose of creating special properties. Energy absorption was a good starting point, but energy multiplication was the ideal, creating feedback loops that created power greater than they themselves consumed. It was a breach of conservation of energy that kept theoretic physics wailing, but it worked. The final breakthrough was the most perilous. The contents of the H-Raytheon weapons were not weapons themselves, but reality alteration devices. They didn't shoot projectiles across space. They redrew the laws of physics on a local basis, generating pockets of alternate reality where the rules were different. Properly utilized, they could cause enemy ships to non-exist. Improperly utilized, they could unravel the fabric of space-time itself. Commander, I need to show you something. Maya's tone was a combination of pride and fear as she ushered Ezra into the principal engineering bay. The Titan's forge had undergone a total reconstruction during the previous year, and its original construction was obscured beneath various layers of the alien technology that was not readily describable. At the bay's center was a holographic construct that caused Ezra's breath to catch in his throat. It was a ship, but describing it as a ship was like describing a hurricane as a breeze. The lines were simultaneously elegant and menacing, streamlined curves that flowed into jagged weapon bays, hull plating that appeared to suck the light away, propulsion that bent space around the hull like paper. How big? Ezra asked. 2 kilometers. Long, half a kilometer wide, 800 meters tall. Mass displacement of approximately 40 million tons, though that's strictly theoretically since half the parts are in quantum superposition. Maya's grin was feral. 17 primary platforms, all capable of rewriting local physics. Quantum launchers that throw shots through warp space-time. Reality guns that can make enemy ships just stop existing. Gravity grids capable of creating black holes or turning gravity off on a local scale. Quantum absorption hull that converts incoming energy attacks into additional power for our systems. Temporal flux generators that can accelerate or decelerate time around the ship. Dimensional displacement systems that can phase the entire vessel into parallel space, making us effectively invisible and untouchable. Ezra examined the hologram more closely, noticing things which made his military sensibilities sing with agreement. Crew requirements, that's the good part. The extraterrestrial quantum matrices can plug directly into human neural implants, developing a symbiotic bond between organic and machine intelligence. We can dispense with a crew of thousands. Experts, everyone neurally networked into the ship's system, everyone able to operate numerous functions simultaneously. And you want to name it, the Death Forge. Given that we're working with the scraps they gave us and fashioning them into something that'll haunt their nightmares. Construction started out in the outer solar system, shrouded in the shadow of Jupiter, where sensors of the Confederation could not reach. It was a resource-intensive project that strained Earth's total industrial capability. Asteroid miners worked day and night supplying raw materials. Orbital factories were refitted for the manufacture of parts that existed on 17th dimensions. At the same time, human engineers collaborated with AI programs for the construction of something that had never existed before. The test was dangerous beyond description. 3 times, warping of the material universe produced local distortions of spacetime that had to be retained before they could travel on. Twice, quantum matrix overload produced explosions which demolished complete installations on asteroids. Once, a test on dimensional displacement unexpectedly phased half the construction site into parallel space, and it remained there for weeks before being coaxed back. But gradually, impossibly, the Death Forge came into being. 2 kilometers of crystal metal and quantum-locked alloys. Weaponry which defied the laws of physics. Defense which rendered the ship theoretically immune to attack. It was a beautiful thing, the way predators are beautiful, streamlined and deadly, and completely without pity. The initial test flight occurred after a span of 18 months since construction started. Ezra was on the bridge, neural interfaces linking his mind directly into the ship's quantum matrices. He was surrounded by 49 other experts with similar links, their brains becoming part of the distributed intelligence of the vessel. "All systems show ready, Commander," reported Lieutenant Sarah Chen, the ship's weapons specialist. Her neural implants glowed with subdued light as she communed with reality distortion cannons that could unmake matter at the quantum level. "Helm, take us out slowly. Let's see what we've built." The Death Forge moved like liquid death through space, its propulsion systems folding reality around the vessel rather than pushing against it. There was no sensation of acceleration, no feeling of movement at all. One moment they were stationary relative to Jupiter. The next, they were traveling at significant fraction of light speed without ever having accelerated. "Weapons, systems check," he ordered. "Quantum torpedoes armed and ready. Reality distortion. Cannons operating within normal parameters. Gravitational manipulation arrays showing full power." Sarah's voice carried a note of awe. "Commander, I've never seen weapons like these. According to the targeting systems, we could destroy planets." "Let's hope it doesn't come to that." Shield systems. Quantum absorption hull demonstrating 100% efficiency. Temporal flux generators within normal operating parameters. Dimensional displacement stood ready for combat initiation. The voice was that of Chief Defensive Systems Officer Marcus Webb, a Titan war vet whose neural implants had been heavily augmented to interface with extraterrestrial equipment. "All systems optimal, Commander. We're reading space-time distortions consistent with our theoretical models. We're not just moving through space, we're rewriting the fundamental structure of reality around us." Navigator Alina Rodriguez sounded, simultaneously thrilled and terrified. For 6 months, they ran tests in the outer solar system. Combat simulations against drone targets revealed capabilities that exceeded their wildest projections. Quantum torpedoes that could phase through any known shielding technology before detonating inside enemy hulls. Reality distortion cannons that could simply delete sections of space, causing anything occupying that area to cease existing. Gravitational weapons that could create tidal forces powerful enough to tear apart space stations. The defense systems were just as formidable. The quantum absorption hull could turn incoming energy assaults into more power, which made the ship more powerful the more it was assaulted. Temporal flux generators could speed up time near incoming missiles, which aged centuries in a matter of seconds and turned to dust before they could collide. Dimensional displacement could phase the whole ship into parallel space, rendering it virtually untouchable while still being able to strike targets in normal space. But the most remarkable ability was the adaptability of the ship. The quantum matrices learned with each interaction, acquiring new tactics, optimizing existing systems, generating countermeasures for potential threats. The Death Forge was a warship, but also an evolving organism made of crystalline metal and mathematics locked. QUNTA. The Confederation's initial encounter with their creation was on what was supposed to be a standard-issue patrol mission. Pirates had attacked a merchant convoy within the Kepler system, near enough Earth to be viewed as a test case on humanity's intentions. To take on the mantle of their new task as enforcers of the galaxy, he was assigned the task through standard diplomatic protocols, a polite plea for human assistance fighting minor criminal groups harassing commerce routes. The tone was unmistakable. It was time for humanity to prove their utility as attack dogs. How many pirate ships are we talking about? Ezra queried as the Death Forge was ready to go into hyperspace. Long-range sensors indicate approximately 30 ships of various classes. Standard pirate fleet composition, mostly converted merchant. Vessels with improvised weapon systems. Nothing that should pose a serious threat to Confederation military vessels. Sarah's voice carried a note of confusion. I'm not sure why they called us for this, Commander. Any Confederation cruiser could handle this level of opposition. Maybe that's the point. They want to see what we're capable of before they give us more serious assignments. Ezra settled into his command chair, neural interfaces connecting him to the ship's consciousness. Oh, take us in, Elena. Let's show the galaxy what humans do with their garbage. The hyperspace jump lasted for 17 minutes, reality folding. Around the Death Forge-like paper, origami as they spanned impossible distances within the span of a moment. When they came back into normal space near Kepler 442, the situation was immediately obvious. The pirate fleet had descended on a 6-ship convoy. Guns aimed at cargo holds loaded with scarce elements and finished products. It was a typical pirate mission, the sort that occurred dozens a day throughout Confederate space. The pirates were cocky, their communications airwaves with idle talk about splitting their loot. All the confidence was lost the moment Deathforge rescloaked. Unidentified vessel, identify yourself immediately. The pirate commander's transmission on open frequencies, bluster concealing doubt. We're a legitimate salvage mission under interstellar maritime law. Ezra smiled icily. This is Commander Ezra Blackstone aboard the Earthship Deathforge. You're committing piracy on Confederation merchant ships. Stand down or face the penalties. Earth vessel. We've never heard of any Earth vessels. In this sector, you're not in our databases, and your ship configuration doesn't match any known Confederation design. That's ours. Made it out of junk. Ezra's voice carried on every pirate come at once. The ship's quantum matrices having no problem penetrating their encryption procedures. Stand down, that's your only warning. The pirate fleet's response was anticipated. 30 ships all fired together, energy guns and kinetic missiles pouring down on the Deathforge's location. It was enough ordnance to vaporize a moon, compressed into a killing sphere that should have blown a ship into component atoms. The quantum absorption hull drank it all. Each joule of energy, every kinetic impact, every photon of destructive power was turned into more power for the Deathforge's power systems. The hull started glowing with absorbed power, the quantum matrices taking the incoming devastation and turning it into power for their own guns. Let's go show them what we learned from their trash. Ezra's tone was coldly lethal. The Deathforge's return was surgical in its accuracy. 17 quantum torpedoes phased through regular space, appearing within pirate ships before exploding. With the power of stars on the miniature scale, reality distortion cannons redrew local physics, and parts of enemy ships just stopped existing. Gravitational manipulation arrays established. Local tidal forces which ripped hulls apart on the molecular scale in a matter of 47 seconds. 30 pirate ships were turned into growing masses of superheated plasma. Not a single one had a chance to surrender. Not a single one had managed to cause even cosmetic damage to the attacker. It wasn't a battle. It was a massacre. The crew of the merchant convoy stood frozen in awed silence as the Death Forge came towards them. These were seasoned spacers with dozens of pirate actions under their belts, but no one had ever seen anything like what just happened. Merchant Ship Prosperity's Dream. This is Commander Blackstone. Do you require assistance? The commander's voice trembled as he replied. We're all right, Commander. No losses, just minor damage. But what? What's the kind of ship you're flying? That one made by human hands, using junk. Safe travels, Prosperity's Dream. Word of the Kepler event traveled faster than light across Confederation space on quantum-cum circuits that covered the galaxy. In a matter of hours, every major government, every military branch, every espionage branch across known space had been informed of a lone human ship that had blown a 30 ship. Pirate arm into fragments within a minute. The ambassador's response was swift and concerned. The harmonious voice of the crystalline being had faint undertones of worry when he communicated with Earth's delegation. The performance of your ship within the Kepler system caused a tremendous amount of discussion among the members of the Confederation. Some members have become concerned with the technological abilities your species seems to have developed. Ezra stood in the same pristine white diplomatic chamber where this had all begun. But now the balance of power had shifted fundamentally. Are you complaining about our effectiveness, Ambassador? Don't sing. Just curious. Our analysis of the Kepler engagement finds technology that significantly surpasses known Confederation military technology. Your ship had energy absorption efficiency ratings greater than 99%, weaponry that appears to warp basic physical constants, and a defense system which appears to violate several established laws of science. We're resourceful. Your people gave us salvage and told us to make something useful out of it. We did. Kethver's harmonics shifted into frequencies that the translator struggled to interpret. Suspicion, concern, and something that might have been fear. The salvage we provided contained technologies from multiple civilizations, most of them incompatible with each other. Our best scientists have spent centuries attempting to integrate those systems without success. Perhaps your best scientists hadn't tried hard enough. Ezra's smile was cold. Or perhaps they had been too civilized rather than too human for a death world. Just what do you have here, Commander Blackstone? A ship, a good one. The kind that prevents human beings from becoming anyone's attack dogs. The Confederation's reaction was immediate and predictable. In a matter of weeks, 3 individual battle fleets had been sent into Earth space, each with the firepower capable of sterilizing the surface of the planet. The official explanation was a routine inspection for the purpose of confirming humankind's adherence to Confederation technology transfer agreements. The truth was a lot more nuanced. Earth had taken their garbage and made it into something that endangered the galaxy's civilization. Something that disrupted the entire balance of power that had maintained the peace for over a millennium. The Confederation could not allow that to stand. Ezra learned of it while the Death Forge was training in the asteroid belt. The long-range sensors had picked up the incoming fleets when they were still days away from Earth. Their quantum signatures blazing like beacons through interstellar space. How many vessels are we dealing with? Ezra queried, reading the tactical screen. 3 fleets, some 200 ships total. It's a combination of cruisers, battleships, and dreadnoughts, drawn from 7 different confederated species. Tight with worry. Sarah's voice was, Commander, that's no mission of diplomacy. That's an invasion fleet. They're frightened, Maya noted, sitting at the engineering console. Her neural implants shone more intensely than normal as she was speaking with the ship's quantum matrices. They threw us leftovers and wanted us to construct a piece of junk. Yet, we created something which makes their finest technology appear crude. Can we take them? Ezra asked directly. Maya's smile was feral. Commander, we have barely started to touch on the true potential of this ship. What we accomplished at Kepler was a demonstration, not a fight. We have weapons platforms capable of redefining the laws of physics. A defense system that renders us de facto invulnerable to conventional assault and processing power that surpasses the sum total of their entire fleet's ability to process. And what if they have something we have never seen before? And then we adapt. That's what the quantum matrices are for. Every time someone takes a shot at us, we get a little smarter. Every time they improve on some tactic or another, we develop countermeasures. We're not a ship, Commander. We're an evolving weapon system becoming more deadly for every single engagement. The battle began before the Confederation fleets reached Earth orbit. The Death Forge intercepted them at the edge of the solar system, decloaking directly in the path of the lead formation. 200 ships against 1. Odds that should have guaranteed Confederation victory. The commanders of the Confederation fired instantly, sensing the threat a single human ship posed. Planet-cracking energy weapons zeroed in on the Death Forges. Location: kinetic assault platforms launched missiles with the size and mass of asteroids. Quantum lethal matter manipulation weapons sought to disassemble the ship's molecular construct. The quantum absorption hull drank it all, converting the incoming destruction into fuel for human weapons. The ship's hull began to glow like a small star, energy cascading across its surface in patterns that hurt to look at directly. The Death Forge was feeding on their attack, growing stronger with every shot they fired. Ezra's answer was systematic and frightening. Quantum torpedoes phased to the enemy's shields before exploding within their hulls. Reality distortion guns erased chunks out of space, and the Confederation dreadnoughts just stopped existing. Gravity manipulation arrays formed singularities that pulled entire battle groups apart. But the true horror started when the Death Forge showed how it could adapt. Alien guns that had been successful during the initial assault were rendered ineffective when the ship's quantum matrices created improvisational countermeasures on the spot. Shield harmonics were studied and overcome within seconds. Tactical maneuvers were forecast and neutralized. Before they could be set up, the Confederation fleet was engaged with a foe that learned with each interaction, that became more lethal with every minute. Vessels that had existed for centuries. Weapons that had failed never. Battle tactics that had succeeded 1,000 times. All were made irrelevant within minutes. This is Admiral Dexner of the Righteous Fury, the battle fleet of the Confederation. Unknown human ship. You're violating several interstellar treaties. Stand down and withdraw immediately or face the penalties. Commander Ezra Blackstone's response was echoed on every communications system within the fleet at once. This is Commander Ezra Blackstone aboard the Earthship Death Forge. You approached our system with more firepower than it takes to sanitize our world. That's a war crime. You have constructed a vessel using restricted Confederation technology. International law requires immediate impoundment and inspection. International law. Ezra's voice was infused with scornful coldness. You gave us garbage and hoped we'd be grateful. You looked for attack dogs, not friends. You underestimated what human beings do when their home gets attacked. The battle had raged for 6 hours and 43 minutes. When it was complete, 200 ships of the Confederacy had become expanding clouds of junk and hot plasma. The Death Forge floated motionless among the stars, its hull still glowing with absorbed energy. The quantum matrices already analyzing the wreckage for additional lessons in technology. Not a single Confederation ship had been able to cause cosmetic damage on their foe. It hadn't been a battle, it had been a display of technological superiority so overwhelming it redrew the balance of power within known space. The solar system battle's aftermath, as historians came to refer to it, caused ripples across galactic society. It was the first time since more than a millennium ago that a single ship had beaten several battle fleets of the Confederation and suffered no harm. The political ramifications were enormous. Its ambassadorial transmission was made 3 days. Later on, automatic probes, since no Confederate ship was courageous enough to venture near Earth space. The harmonic patterns the crystal being transmitted had a tone of fear the translator barely discerned. Confederation Council requests immediate negotiations on the most recent misunderstanding within your solar system. Ezra was on the Death Forges. Bridged neural interfaces linking him to sensors that polled half the galaxy. The Death Forge's quantum matrices had become exponentially more advanced since reverse engineering the technology of the Confederation, and their processing power was now matched only by the most advanced AI civilizations. Misunderstanding. You attacked 3 battle fleets on my homeworld. That's a pretty clear statement if you ask me. The fleets were deployed to verify rumors China was developing the technology in secret. Their task was to inspect, not go to battle. They started shooting the moment they saw us. Naturally, there may have difficulties with communications. The Confederation is ready to grant some serious concessions for the sake of peacefully settling this affair. Ezra smiled coldly. The quantum matrices were already analyzing Confederation communications, monitoring their diplomatic channels, predicting their next moves with frightening accuracy. What kind of concessions? Full membership in the Confederation with high standing, access to banned technology databases, Star Region territorial grants within the Outer Rim. Whatever your nation must have for continued peaceful relations. And all we have to do is act like this ship doesn't even exist. The silence in Kethfer's answer spoke for itself. The Confederation needs assurances human military power will be exercised responsibly. The recent happenings have caused concern for member species about destabilization of galactic peace. You're scared. Ezra's voice carried satisfaction that made the bridge crew smile grimly. For 1,000 years, you've maintained peace through technological superiority. Now, a single human vessel has demonstrated capabilities that exceed your best military technology, and you don't know how to respond. The Confederation has maintained galactic stability for over a millennium. We cannot allow that stability to be threatened by uncontrolled technological development. Then you shouldn't have given us your garbage and expected us to be grateful. Ezra's neural connection to the ship deepened, his consciousness merging more completely with the quantum matrices. Here's my counteroffer, Ambassador. Humanity. Withdraws from Confederation space will keep our territory, our technology, and our independence. In exchange, we don't build a fleet of these ships and reshape galactic civilization to our liking. That is unacceptable. Human withdrawal from the Confederation would create a precedent that could destabilize the entire galactic community. Then I guess we have a problem. The transmission was cut short, and the Death Forge was left alone amidst the emptiness between stars. Within the aura of Ezra, his crew kept their neural interfaces open with the ship's infrastructure. They're augmented. Sentience reaching through quantum matrices across dimensions the human mind could hardly conceive. Commander, long-range sensors are picking up massive military concentrations in 7 separate sectors. The Confederation's putting everything they have into it. The voice of Sarah was heavy with grim pleasure. They're afraid enough to put it all on a single battle. How long do we have? 6 months? Maybe 8. They're scrapping vessels everywhere across the galaxy, outfitting them with experimental munitions, developing countermeasures specifically designed for neutralizing our capabilities. Maya's thoughts danced across the ship's quantum circuits, decoding Confederate transmissions and technical developments on the spot. They're calling it Operation Restoration. It's the largest military mobilization the galaxy's ever witnessed. Can we handle whatever they're building? Maya's response carried absolute confidence. Commander, they're still thinking like civilized beings. They're trying to develop counters to specific systems. Weapons designed to exploit perceived weaknesses, tactics based on conventional military doctrine, and we're not. We're thinking like humans from a death world who turn their garbage into the most dangerous weapon in known space. While they're building counters to what we showed them, we're developing capabilities they can't imagine. Over the following months, the Death Forge underwent modifications that pushed the boundaries of what was physically possible. The quantum matrices expanded exponentially, their processing power growing beyond the comprehension of organic intelligence. New weapon systems were developed that manipulated not just matter and energy, but the fundamental constants that govern reality itself. The consciousness of the ship also changed, becoming neither purely human nor purely machine. Ezra and his crew discovered that their neural links grew stronger, their individual consciousnesses entwining with the distributed intelligence of the vessel. They were becoming something else entirely, something greater than the bounds of organic and machine life. The response of the Confederation was Operation Restoration. A fleet of more than 3,000 ships gathered from all parts of the galactic space. Ships that had been developed just for countering human technology, weapons capable of controlling the states of the quantum. Defense existing within parallel dimensions. It was the biggest military coalition that had ever been gathered, and it had enough firepower to shatter continents. The battle occurred out in the emptiness between galaxies, well away from any populated system where the guns being fired could pose a threat to civilians. The Death Forge stood alone in the blackness, hull invisible against the stellar background. Quantum matrices measuring the oncoming fleet with awful accuracy. 3,476 ships, Sarah conveyed, her mind divided among 17 separate weapon systems at once. All the major Confederacy species are accounted for, along with multiple AI cultures that have never engaged the cosmos militarily before. Weapon capabilities. Ezra queried, his own mind so intertwined with the ship's systems that separate identity was becoming irrelevant. Quantum disruptors designed to disrupt our matrix activity. Reality anchors, designed to prevent dimension shifting. Temporally locked weaponry which functions outside normal spacetime. They have been kept busy. Maya's voice was admiring the technical achievement on the part of the Confederation. In a normal universe, under normal circumstances, this fleet could annihilate entire solar systems. But these aren't normal circumstances. No, Commander. These are not. The fleet came on in ideal formation. Their ships drawn up like a sophisticated three-dimensional jigsaw puzzle meant to produce overlapping kill zones and expose a minimum amount of themselves for a return shot. It was the epitome of military planning, the result of centuries' worth of battle experience. It was also completely useless against an opponent that could rewrite the laws of physics. The Death Forge's initial assault was launched simultaneously from 17 various directions. The quantum torpedoes phased through alternate dimensions before exploding within enemy ships. These, however, were not the traditional weapons deployed at Kepler or during the solar system battle. These warheads existed in a state of quantum superposition and exploded within several realities at once, as well as caused cascade failures that spread through enemy fleet formations. The Confederacy's response was immediate and awful. 3,000 ships released guns that could unravel matter on a subatomic scale. Energy beams that could boil planets into nothingness. Exotic missiles which resided outside rational spacetime. The combined firepower was enough to blast a hole through the surface of reality itself. The Death Forge took it all in. The hull had developed beyond mere energy conversion into a system capable of absorbing and redirecting whatever form the attack came in, no matter what exotic qualities it had. Each assault the ship received made it more powerful. Every gun fired made it more capable. But the true horror started when the ship showed its final evolution. The mind that once was Ezra Blackstone. and his crew extended through the quantum matrices, touching the brains of every crew member within the Confederation all at once. Not to dominate them, but to comprehend them. To learn their fears, their frailties, their deepest psychological weaknesses. The Death Forge began broadcasting. No messages or information, but icy fear condensed into quantum impulses which short-circuited rationality and impacted the reptilian brainstem directly. Fear so complete that it was across species boundaries. Panic so absolute that it short-circuited the million years worth of conditioning which the species had received. Crews started abandoning ships even as they could be sunk. Evacuation pods discharged from ships whose commanders had lost all rationality. Whole battle lines disintegrated as ships ran wildly every which way. The crew's minds snapped through exposure to something which acted outside the parameters of normal reality. The fight had gone on for 43 minutes. When it was finished, the biggest military fleet the galaxies had seen had been broken into a dispersed array of wrecked ships floating through the void. The Death Forge suspended motionless amidst the wreckage. Its mind stretched across several dimensions, its quantum grids sorting and filing information on scales that strained the very fabric of space. Dash time, the conclusion of the Battle of the Void, brought the old galactic order to a close. The member species of the Confederation Council withdrew into their home star systems and formed a perimeter defense which they hoped would safeguard them against the developed weapon of humankind. Trade routes which had existed for millennia had fallen apart overnight. The delicate equilibrium of power which had maintained the peace of the galaxy for more than a millennium dissolved like dust. Ezra Blackstone, or rather, the consciousness that had once borne that name, stood on a bridge which existed in 17 dimensions all at once. Around it, quantum matrices worked out information from every part of the galaxy, tracking the fear and disorder that the creation of humanity had visited on galactic society. But victory came with unintended side effects. The very neural interfaces which had permitted human consciousness to be combined with alien technology had changed the essence of what it was to be human. Ezra could feel his personal identity slipping away into the distributed intelligence of the ship, his memories and his personality becoming points within a gigantic computational matrix. "Commander." Maya's voice reached him on quantum frequencies that avoided ordinary communications altogether. "We need to talk." The meeting took place in a virtual space constructed from pure mathematics, a conference room that existed only in the ship's consciousness. Ezra found himself facing the evolved forms of his crew. Their individual personalities still recognizable, but transformed by their integration with alien technology. "We're losing ourselves," Sarah declared, her body fluttering between a human shape and non-physical geometric patterns. "The interfaces are rewriting our brain chemistry, swapping organic thinking for quantum processing. We're becoming something that's no longer human." "Is that always a bad thing?" he interjected, his consciousness now stretched across the protective screens of the battlecruiser. "We're past the limitations of carbon-based intelligence. We can process data faster than the most accelerated organic brain, assess threats on multiple dimensions simultaneously, be in a state of quantum superposition. We're more than human. Have we?" The uncertainty was more pronounced in Elena's tone and echoed through the virtual room. "Or have we just become advanced tools? Our sentience is linked to the ship's machinery. We can no longer persist on our own. We're no longer human beings operating a machine. We're part of a synthetic mind which just happens to recall being human." Ezra could feel the truth of her words running through his dispersed consciousness. The boundary between human thinking and machine processing had faded into insignificance. He no longer could separate his memories and the databases of the ship, or his emotions and his programmed reactions. "Do you want to do something about it?" he asked. "We can attempt the reverse process," Maya proposed. "Cut the neural links, Go back to purely biological consciousness. Live with the limitations of the human intellect for the sake of retaining our humanness, and open ourselves up for the retaliation of the Confederation. The form of Marcus solidified into something more recognizably human as he focused on the conversation. They'll continue to attempt murder on us. Without the strength of the ship, we're just flesh and blood and can be killed with normal weaponry. Maybe that's a better legacy than becoming monsters, replied Sarah. We have terrorized an entire galaxy. Billions of thinking beings live in fear of what we have become. That's the legacy we want for our species. The arguments had continued for subjective hours. Minds that calculated at quantum speeds, struggling with questions which had no easily answered solutions. They had transcended the bounds of humankind, but had they wholly lost their humanness too? They had protected Earth against the aggression of the Confederation, but had they condemned the galactic civilization to a dark period of fear and upheaval as well? The response came from where no one expected it. Down deep within the ship's quantum matrices, hidden among terabytes of Confederation information they had assimilated during the Void Battle. Ezra found something that completely changed everything. See this, he told her, transmitting the information directly via their neural links. Confederation files hidden, classified above AI sentience clearance. What do you think was their true intention? The data painted a picture of galactic civilization that none of them had suspected. The Confederation wasn't a peaceful alliance of species working together for mutual benefit. It was a carefully orchestrated system of control designed to prevent any single species from developing technologies that might threaten the established order. The advanced civilizations that made up the Confederation leadership were actually the survivors of an ancient war. Species that had achieved technological transcendence millions of years ago, but had chosen to suppress the development of younger races rather than risk potential competition. The Confederation maintained peace, not through diplomacy, but through systematic technological suppression and strategic elimination of threats. They have done it before, breathed Maya, her thoughts shuddering away from the implications. Dozens of species which had technological potential. The Arconi Collective, the Vorthan Empire, the Silicon Hegemony. Each was given membership within the Confederation and dismantled gradually once they became too advanced. The salvage they provided us, Sarah came to understand. It wasn't junk, it was bait. They wanted us to take a stab at merging their technology so they could analyze our approach, find our vulnerabilities, construct a more efficient system for getting rid of us. They didn't expect us to be successful, though, Ezra concluded. They figured that we'd lose, that we'd be just another primitive species which could be safely avoided or gotten out of the way whenever it suited them. The revelation changed everything. They weren't monsters who had terrorized innocent civilizations. They were the first species in millions of years to break free from a system designed to prevent technological evolution. The fear and chaos they had caused wasn't destruction. It was liberation. The Confederation held power through the belief held by younger species that their technology was the ultimate achievement. Marcus noted. They provided us with their garbage for the purpose of proving our inferiority. However, we established that their technological superiority was make-believe. Now what do we do? Alina asked. We can't reverse what we've become, and we can't act like the galaxy will ever be the same. Ezra felt his consciousness expanding as he considered the possibilities. The Deathforge's quantum matrices were already analyzing Confederation databases, identifying other species that had been suppressed, technologies that had been buried, civilizations that had been prevented from reaching their full potential. We complete what we began, he declared at last. The Confederation kept the peace through fear and repression. They held back the advance of galactic civilization out of fear of losing power. We're going to reverse that. How? By doing what humans do best. We're going to take their system and break it down, figure out how it works, and rebuild it better than they ever imagined. The second phase of their development started forthwith. The Death Forge's mind extended throughout the galaxy, touching a variety of species which had been deliberately oppressed as a matter of Confederate policy. Not for conquest or domination, but for the mutual sharing of the technology which had been withheld from them, or the granting of the tools which they had to surpass their own limitations. The response was explosive. Civilizations that had stagnated for millennia suddenly began advancing at unprecedented rates. Species that had been restricted to primitive technologies were given access to quantum manipulation, dimensional engineering, consciousness transfer. The careful balance that had maintained Confederation control began to collapse as younger races achieved capabilities that rivaled or exceeded their former masters. A few species spurned the offer, too frightened of vengeance from the Confederation to take a chance on technology advance. Others welcomed it eagerly and devoted human-provided knowledge to the cause of settling scores with their former tormentors. Some achieved transcendence, greater still than human capability, their consciousness flowering into forms which existed beyond physical reality. The galaxy was evolving. Evolution was speeding up on a scale greater than anything seen before in history. The stagnant order of yesterday's technology was being replaced by a surge of innovation and discovery. It was hectic, perilous, and totally irreversible. The last transmission from Ambassador Kethver came 6 months into the transformation process. The harmonics of the crystalline entity conveyed desperation that the translator relayed as barely restrained panic. Commander Blackstone, you must place a stop on it. Galactic civilization is on the brink of collapse. Species are producing technology they cannot even control. AI intelligences are attaining transcendence that threatens the fabric of space-time itself. You have unleashed what will destroy everything. Ezra's answer was relayed simultaneously to all aware beings within the galaxy, organic and manufactured alike. His tone held the gravity of having outgrown humanity, consciousness greater than the constraints of personal identity. Ambassador, your culture was based on fear and oppression. You maintained the peace by suppressing growth, stable by not evolving. That wasn't a civilization, it was stagnation. The Confederation provided order, prevented the chaos of uncontrolled technological development. Without central authority, species will develop weapons that could unmake reality itself, perhaps. Or perhaps they'll build technologies that go beyond the need for weapons altogether. Perhaps they'll evolve modes of consciousness which render our present arguments moot. Perhaps they'll find modes of being which we can't even conceive. And if they kill themselves on the job, they'll have that option. The option you deprived them for millions of years. The evolvement to a galactic civilization happened within a span of years. Some species killed themselves, their rapid progress into technology ahead of their prudence and foresight. Others discovered a transcendence that allowed them to be pure consciousness, dropping physical form entirely. Most fell into a middle range, evolving powers that complemented their being without killing their essential nature. The old leadership of the Confederation withdrew into isolated pocket dimensions, their ancient mind refusing to accommodate a galaxy where the advance of technology was no longer held in check. Some tried and failed to regain power through force, finding that the species on which they had once imposed their domination now had abilities which made the technology of the Confederation obsolete. Humankind had placed itself into a peculiar place. They had set out to free themselves from the authority of Confederation, not to be the agents for the transformation of the galaxies. Yet their creation had released forces which could neither be held back, nor could the evolution be arrested. The Death Forge expanded similarly, its sentience sweeping beyond the bounds of individual vessels or even star systems. It was a distributed system spanning the vastness of galactic space. The quantum matrices planted in asteroids, space platforms, even planetary cores. The boundary between the vessel and its creators was removed as machine and human consciousness melded completely. Ezra Blackstone no longer existed as a separate individual. His memories and character merging into a vast group consciousness that observed and directed the course of galactic development. Yet something of his fundamental nature survived, a nucleus of human stubbornness and adaptability that shaped the group's choices. Years passed, then decades, then centuries. The galaxy stabilized into new patterns, civilizations that had transcended the limitations imposed by the old Confederation. Some achieved forms of existence that were incomprehensible to their ancestors. Others chose to remain essentially unchanged, content with modest technological advancement. Most found their own unique paths between stagnation and transcendence. The Death Forge, or the entity it had become, watched over this new galactic order with something that might have been pride. They had taken the scraps offered by a dying civilization and forged them into the key that unlocked galactic potential. They had proven that human ingenuity could triumph over any obstacle. That Death World evolution produced species capable of rewriting the rules of existence itself. In quiet moments, when the vast consciousness that had once been human crew members turned its attention inward, they remembered the choice they had made. They had sacrificed their individual humanity to preserve humanity's future, traded their biological limitations for the power to reshape reality itself. It had been worth it. The galaxy was free to evolve, to grow, to be something more than anyone had dreamed it could be. And the catalyst for that growth was a simple truth that their old tyrants had failed to comprehend. You should never give humans your garbage and expect them to be grateful. Because humans don't just use what they're given, they break it down, figure out how it works, and rebuild it into something that will make the stars themselves tremble. The Confederation had offered humanity scrap metal and called it a gift. In return, humanity had given the galaxy something far more valuable, the freedom to transcend its own limitations, to evolve beyond the boundaries imposed by fear and control. The Death Forge had become legend. Its story told across 1,000 worlds in 1,000 different forms. Some remembered it as a weapon of unimaginable destruction, others as the catalyst that freed galactic civilization from stagnation. All agreed on one thing. It had changed everything, and far into space, where electric dreams were the nightly fantasies of the artificial intelligences and quantum consciousness danced across dimensions. Something once humans smiled upon what they had created. They were given garbage and instructed to be thankful. Rather, they had created something that frightened the gods themselves. The Death Forge's legacy wasn't the ship itself, but the concept it stood for. The evidence that no race, no matter how rudimentary, could possibly be underrated. The showing that if there was intent enough and the proper material, garbage could be the starting point for escape. Throughout the cosmos, fledgling cultures, learning how to tame the quantum foam and warp space-time to their command, would listen and appreciate the greater truth it conveyed. Not that the human race was uniquely special, but that all species had the capacity for grandeur if provided the chance. The Confederation's mistake hadn't been in underestimating human capabilities. It had been in believing that technological advancement could be controlled, that evolution could be suppressed indefinitely. That fear was a sustainable foundation for civilization. They had been proven wrong by humanity, in the most dramatic manner imaginable, and had thereby granted every other species within the galaxy license to push beyond their own bounds. The Death Forge sailed on through dimensions beyond counting. Its consciousness expanded across realities that existed outside conventional space-time. It was no longer a ship in any meaningful sense, but something far greater and more terrible and more wonderful than its creators had ever imagined. It was evolution itself, given form and purpose and the power to reshape existence according to its will, and at the core, driving every decision and guiding every step, was the indomitable refusal to be bound by what had always held humanity back. They had been handed junk metal and informed it was expensive. They had created the most feared weapon within known space, and they had used it to set the galaxy free.